Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be discussing the results of the poll that asked you, how are you feeling about Grogu lately? I'll then be reading and responding to some of the comments, and once again, I will be bringing my wife, Sailor Naboo, in from my other channel. Just makes it much easier to talk to someone in a more candid video like this than just staring at a microphone and talking to it. And so if you like this video, do check out that second channel of ours. And now let's get to the results of the poll.
Which of the following statements best describe how you feel about Grogu? 11% said love Grogu and or cannot get enough of him. 41% I like Grogu well enough and or I'm very cool with getting more. 27% he's fine and or I'm kind of neutral or don't care much either way. 16% not a huge fan and or getting tired of him. And 4% can't stand him and or wish he'd go away for good already.
Seems like most people are still on board the Grogu train, though the comments did tend to lean towards a little bit more negative towards him, which is always the case. Usually when people are positive, they tend not to leave comments, and when they're negative, they do. Just how it always works. Mm-hmm. As for me personally, I think every season I kind of go down a level here. I think the first season I loved Grogu. I don't know that I couldn't get enough of him, but I was fine with getting as much of him as we did.
Well, he was the plot of the story.
Yeah,
the first two seasons.
You're exactly right. First two seasons did kind of revolve around what to do about Grogu, which sometimes is what the show feels like it should be called. But then the second season, I was like, okay, I like Grogu well enough, and I'm cool with getting more. And now this third season, I'm like, he's fine, and I don't really care much either way, but maybe it's getting a little old. So if we do go another season of Grogu, if season 4 is all about Grogu, I'm probably not going to be such a huge fan anymore unless some big changes happen with him.
As to where I'd fall, I love Grogu. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
But he needs to be evolving as a character. And that's what matters more to me in terms of a show, is I want to see him evolve as a character. You tell me he's a character, I'd like to see him become one.
Agreed. I was kind of okay with him being more, again, plot device in the first two seasons because it worked. I'm not going to deny it. It worked very well, and now it's not working the same way anymore, I think. All right, and before getting to the comments, let me just once again say thank you to everyone who does indeed vote, comment, and watch these videos. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who supports both my channels over on Patreon. And so let's now begin, as we always do, with the top-rated comment.
Comment comes from Issa Hamilton. Love Grogu. Hate Disney for being so uncontrollably greedy that they can't suppress the urge to maximize their marketing dollars and let it affect their storytelling.
Yeah, it does. There's no way that the popularity of Grogu doesn't affect the direction of The Mandalorian to some degree. I'm not saying you have to believe the conspiracy, quote unquote, that Disney mandated his return to John and Dave. You have to bring him back for season 3. It does seem that way. I tend to lean that way. But one way or another, there's no way the popularity of Grogu has not affected the story of The Mandalorian to some degree.
It's interesting because they marketed The Mandalorian kind of as a mix. It's like a family type show is what they want it to be, I think. If you take Grogu out of the mix, it's not a family show anymore. He's literally in there because they knew that would help bring younger kids or young people into the audience, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I think one of the comments we'll get to kind of touches on that a little bit. You're right. Without Grogu, the show it's kind of dark, or it should be. That's kind of what I expected the show to be, a little more on the darker side going into it. Before we ever even seen Grogu, seen that first episode and knew he was going to be in the show. It's kind of sold as, if you read the description of the show, it's sold as a lone gunfighter making his way across the galaxy. And it's sold as a kind of an old school spaghetti western.
The next comment is from Hellion Soul. I was definitely attached to him the first 2 seasons, and his send-off with Luke was perfection. Distance creates desire. They needed to keep him in the pocket for us to really be happy to see him. It really is a shame they folded immediately and brought him back before season 3 even started.
Absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes for both in the story and out. I think it just feels so quick. And I know Jon Favreau has told us a couple of years have gone by in story, so they've been apart for a while, so it is more dramatic because he tells us it is. But for us, the audience, and yes, time has gone by in between the seasons and in between Book of Boba Fett. But there was no like, oh, we had to miss Grogu in story. We never had to miss him in story. He was just back again.
And the problem with him telling us about how much time went past is it doesn't feel like that's the timetable at all.
It doesn't feel like it,
so
and it
even
doesn't.
Him saying it, I don't believe him.
No, I don't believe him either. I think he's just saying that to try to give it a little more weight and a little more emotion to it. Like, oh, they were apart for years. Well, it doesn't. If you watch the Book of Boba Fett and you see the training with Luke, it doesn't feel like they've been together for 2 years. Maybe a couple weeks. I don't know. I tend to lean more towards a couple days, honestly. But it doesn't feel like they've been there for years.
How long was Mando asleep on that bench?
Rip Van Mandalorian, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Maybe he was asleep for a couple of years. I don't know.
Next comment is from Maria Cara. I like the idea of Grogu as a character. I think he was a great addition to the first season, and one that they were able to keep under wraps to give us a really nice surprise. Unfortunately, the decision to have him return to Din during Book of Boba Fett was a huge misstep in my eyes. It basically erases everything that happened in Season 1 and Season 2. Additionally, I feel like they don't have Grogu's movement down yet. It looked downright silly and choppy when he was jumping over Paz's kid in the last episode.
Yes, I know a lot of people find his movements cute, and they are, you know.
His regular movements.
Sure, but every time he's jumped, and he's jumped a couple times this season, it feels like they're just tossing a doll.
Or when Din threw him to Grief Karga in episode 1.
Yeah, or when he jumped into Pelly's hands or arms.
It's the limitations of practical effects, I think. Because they're trying to use practical effects. If they CGI'd him, it would probably look much smoother.
Yeah.
But we'd all be like, CGI. They're just trying to use practical effects, and unfortunately, this is what we're getting.
I'd much rather have Yoda jumping around episode 2 with CGI effects over this. Just CGI it. It looks so strange. It really makes him feel like a puppet or a prop.
Because the problem is his clothes and his feet aren't moving naturally.
Yeah, he's just like stiff. He gets
he's not. We can't see him like crouching or bending his knees to take off into a jump. He just shoots up like a rocket ship because his robes are so bulky and you don't like ever see his feet, so you can't see the proper movements of his legs and things. So it's just popping up and down.
Yeah, you could explain it as, he's using the Force to just kind of move. And we saw Luke train him. I'm not saying it's a huge deal. It's jarring when you see it every now and then. It's just like, that looked really out of place.
Mm-hmm. Next comment is from Rypask. Grogu is just holding back the story at this point. This comment goes along with Sprocket List. I'm a 50-year-old man who loved the Ewoks back in 1983. I understand I have to share Star Wars with other types of fans. I decided I could tolerate Baby Yoda if he didn't outstay his welcome. It's reached that point because he's holding the show back. Going off with Luke was the perfect ending.
Yeah, as someone who also liked the Ewoks when he was younger.
Yub nub.
I get it. I get you want to market some things towards children. I get that he is huge, not just among kids, but adult. There's tons of adults. I know some personally who literally watch the show for Grogu. So I get that. I get he's huge. Disney wants to capitalize. I don't begrudge them. Yet at the same time, going off with Luke felt like such a perfect ending. It was emotional, on screen and off. I can't imagine too many people who had followed that journey for 2 seasons were a little misty-eyed watching the parting of ways.
Well, there's like rules you have to follow, I feel like, with cute type characters that are put in there for that specific reason. And in Andor, they did it perfectly. B the droid was adorable.
Agreed.
I loved B the droid.
Yeah.
But they didn't put him in every episode just because he was cute.
They didn't put him in every episode, and they made him...
He was important to the plot, he didn't overshine.
Here's the problem. He had more character or characterization in the handful of episodes he was in than Grogu's had in 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. He did.
He did. You could see all of his emotions, and he was never the star of the show.
No.
He never had to be, but he was a perfect addition on the side.
He was. They did some really fantastic things with him. They needed to take a few notes, I think, from that show with Grogu. Because we do know they're pushing Grogu.
Yes, absolutely.
There's going to be some comments coming up that talk about his character development, and I agree, there is an attempt to be made here, but, I mean, just look at B2.
You can have a cute character in the show without overshadowing the show.
Without having to, go to him and seeing him do cute things. That's the big difference. Like, Grogu is always like, we're gonna put the camera on him, he's going to do something cute, he's going to move on. Mm-hmm. Or we're going to move on. With others, it's not that they just focus on him as much as he does it within the story.
Again, this is because they marketed this as a family show.
Yeah, and you want to put him on screen so the kids go, ooh, I want that toy, mommy or daddy, right?
Yep, he's still all over the shelves at stores. You can't find
anything but Grogu.
Figures,
no, they don't make anything but Grogu toy. If you go into your average Walmart or Target, it's all pretty much Grogu and rejects from the Black Series and Vintage Collection.
Next comment comes from Hunter Nelson. I think that the mass love and popularity of Grogu transitioned The Mandalorian from a dark, gritty show about bounty hunting to a show that tries too hard to be kid-friendly. Disney had such a solid start to a show that could have garnered an audience outside of the Star Wars community, but they fumbled their opportunity. Just watch the first episode of the show and compare it to what we're getting now. As a wise Jedi Master once said, we are supposed to be moving up, not down.
I agree and disagree, because it did garner an audience outside of your classic Star Wars type fan, but it didn't turn them into Star Wars fans. They're not watching it because they suddenly realize, oh, I like Star Wars. Star Wars is good. Not saying this isn't a Star Wars show or that it doesn't feel like Star Wars, but as I said before, and it's anecdotal, but I'd imagine a lot of you out there have a similar story. I know a lot of people who like this show because of Grogu. That's it. Who said at the end of season 2, well, I guess I'm done watching it, because while I'm watching it is gone.
It reminds me in a way of how they've transitioned Rebels. Star Wars Rebels started out really kid-friendly because it was animated and they assumed their target audience were young kids or just kids in general. Then as the series went on, it got more adult when they probably honed into who's actually watching the show. So I feel like with this, it's sliding the wrong direction. They're like, oh, people really start watching this. Oh, look at all the buzz around Grogu, so they are sliding it that way.
Yeah, I think Clone Wars is the same thing. I think Lucas had the idea of making a very kid-friendly show, and the first few seasons are much more kid-friendly. And then he realized, well, I think mostly adults and kids who are now growing up are watching the show. Because there are a lot of people who kind of grew up with the Clone Wars, and the show kind of grows up with you.
Next comment from Mr. Narwhal. I think this most recent episode was a step in the right direction. They need to turn him into an actual character rather than a prop, and I think they began that process in The Foundling.
I'm not so sure about that. The big things Grogu did in this episode was have the dart duel with Paz's son, at which he just kind of stood there until Mando literally told him what to do. Okay, you can do your thing, Grogu. And then he beats him, okay? Then the armorer takes him in and he has the flashback, which was awesome for Ahmad Best. I mean, I think it was far cooler for Ahmad Best than it was for Grogu. It doesn't do anything for Grogu. We now know the person who saved him, or the Jedi who saved him, whereas we always knew a Jedi had saved him. So I would ask, what did we actually learn? How was that growth for Grogu? I mean, I suppose you could say he's now coming to terms with what happened, and that's going to carry forward somehow. But for us, the audience, we didn't learn anything new other than Ahmad Best, his character, saved Grogu.
I think I'm going to disagree with you a little bit and agree a little bit more with Mr. Narwhal here. I think this season, in general, has done more to grow his character. For example, in episode 2, we saw that he must have been listening when Mando was teaching him. He's been paying attention. He was able to get in the ship and direct the droid to go to Bo-Katan and seek help. He was able to guide Bo-Katan back because he listened, and he's been obviously training and understanding what Mando's been trying to tell him. He knew how to find his way, because Mandalorians don't get lost.
Well, here's the issue I had with that. They made it way too obvious. Literally, they enter the system, and Mando gives him, and Bo-Katan's world is right over here.
Well, but they did the same thing when he was leaving Navarro and flying. He was showing him, how the ship worked, how the things did. He's just pointing things out to keep it fresh in a kid's mind, to train him. Best training is repetition.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's a little too overt. It was like, the episode was literally, hey, we entered the system. I'm going to tell you where Bo-Katan is. 5 minutes later, I get captured and tell you to go find Bo-Katan.
He also showed him where his world was. He was showing him this is their home system.
Well, they masked it very well, right? Mm-hmm. They made it seem like he talks about how Mandalorians don't lose their way. He shows them around. I'm not saying doesn't make sense. I'm simply saying it comes across very in your face. Like, oh, he knew that because 5 minutes ago in story here, or not in story, but for us, the audience, he's literally telling him how to find Bo-Katan.
But it's important for us as an audience to see that he is being trained and taught, and he's learning, which means he can evolve.
No, I'm not saying I don't think he can evolve. I'm saying I don't know that episode or what they've done with him this season is really like, it may be laying some foundation, but we're halfway through the season and I don't feel like he's any more of a character than he was at the beginning. Maybe slightly. Maybe they're kind of nudging him down the path, but he needs to do something in the back half of the season. And not just, oh, we're going to continue the flashback and show you what happened. No, he needs to... The biggest choice he made, pretty much the only choice he made, happened in the Book of Boba Fett. And that needs to change. Something needs to happen.
Our last comment today comes from Vanquish. They should have handled Grogu like Groot. Guardians of the Galaxy didn't leave Groot as a baby despite him being more popular and marketable. He grew each film. Same could be for Grogu in each season.
He did, and his personality kind of shifted too. He became teenager Groot, and then what I like about Groot is he did something. He does something hugely important in Infinity War. So they managed to actually have him, he made that decision. He went out and took some initiative, which is what Grogu is lacking, initiative. He does everything as a reaction. Like I said before, the only decision we have seen, the only big decision he has personally made was one that was thrust upon him by another character. That was a Luke. You have to pick this or that, A or B. Which one is it, Grogu?
You're not exactly wrong, no. Groot was handled very well. He was kind of a background character. You kind of see him as like comedic, just like Grogu. But he makes these important decisions that affect everything. In the first movie, he sacrificed himself to save everybody.
Yeah, I also forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah. Then in the second movie, Teenage Groot, he sacrificed himself again.
Yeah.
Or that was
Infinity War, yeah.
Infinity War.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's all blurs together at this point with the MCU.
Even in the second movie, as Baby Groot, he had a job to do. He did go and he got the...
Oh, the key. Did
he
go get...
He went and he got the key. Yes, he failed a bunch of times for the laughs, but he did some important things along the way.
Yeah.
And they didn't keep him like that forever.
No, he was one movie, he was Baby Groot. After being Big Groot, and then he was Baby Groot, and then it was Teenage Groot. Constantly...
Now he's burly, muscly Groot.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Well,
I missed the original Groot design. I was hoping he'd grow back up into that. Instead, he worked out a little too hard, and he's buff Groot.
Yeah, and in comparison, 3 seasons of Grogu, and he is Grogu, just Baby Grogu, every season.
He definitely needs more to show his character growth.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is you did kind of put yourself into this corner of, oh, he's been alive for 50 years and he's still a baby. Well, it's going to be really weird if tomorrow he's not a baby, because what kind of weird growth cycle do they have where 50 years they're infantile and then all of a sudden they start talking and making huge decisions? Like, I understand why they're having problems with Grogu, but you need to do something already. And hopefully the back half of the season 3 of The Mandalorian here is what they're going to do. That it will be a progression of this character in some degree. All right, well, that is all we got for you this time. So now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about Grogu. Is he getting a little annoying, or do you still love him and can't get enough? Whatever the case may be, leave those comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and do check out our second channel if you enjoyed this video, which I'm assuming if you made it this far, maybe you did, because we do a lot more videos just like this one over there. Either way, leave the comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.